Hello guys, and welcome to your 5th lesson on how to create a comic strip. In this lesson we are going to ink the panels of our comic, and we are also going to put the dialogue on our speech bubbles. Before we start inking the panels, I am going to show you how to create a simple inking brush. Nothing too crazy, but it will get the job done, and it will make our lines look great. I am going to explain this process step by step so you won't miss anything. In case you are lost one step, just go back on the video to keep it up. I will try to explain it as best as I can. It is not very difficult to create a simple inking brush. Once you know all the steps, you can play with some other options so you can create your own brushes. The first thing we are going to do is to choose our brush. Right-click on your canvas to open the brush window. Here I will choose the second default brush from Photoshop. As you can see, the default brush is making the same line every time I draw. It doesn't respect the pen pressure that I apply on my tablet. This happens because those are the default options that this brush has. I will click on the brush icon located on the right side of the canvas. The brush option window will display a series of elements you can modify. I will click the brush type shape option and I will modify the spacing. This option creates a space between the shape of your brush every time you draw a line. For the inking brush, I will leave the spacing at 10%, and the hardness I will leave it at 100%. Now we will go to the shape dynamics option. I will click on it and it will display a different window. Below the size jitter option, there's the control option. I will click on it and choose the option pen pressure. As you can see, on the window below, the shape of our brush changed. The option that we just clicked will respect the pressure that we apply on our drawing tablet. If we put less pressure, the lines will be thinner. If we put a lot of pressure, our lines will become thicker. We will leave the smoothing option on and we now have our inking brush. It is simple, but it will work perfectly. As you can see now, the lines of my brush are reacting to the pressure that I apply on the tablet. Our inking brush works perfectly. Now we are going to save our brush. Right-click on your canvas to open again the brush window. Go to the gear icon on your right to display the options window. Now click on the new brush preset option. When you click it, it will display a new window with the name of the previous brush. In this new window, just rename your brush with anything you like, and when you are done, just click OK. And now we have our final brush. As you can see, our brush now makes better lines with different thickness depending on the pressure we apply on our drawing tablet. I will zoom in and show you how the thickness of my lines change from start to finish. This is what we look for on our inking brushes, so it will feel more natural. And that's the process for making an inking brush. Hope it was helpful for you. Now that we have our brush, we are going to start the inking process. Just as our last lesson, I will be explaining the things I do while inking and how you can apply them into your work. The first thing that I am going to do is to lower the opacity of my sketch layer and create a new layer on top. I will also rename it. Then, on my sketch layer, I will click on the brush icon from the layer window. This will block my sketch layer so I won't draw on it. I always do this step to make sure that all my inking is being done on the correct layer. I will start giving you some tips of the things I usually do while inking, and maybe something will work for you. The first thing that I do is to divide my panel into elements. My first panel has my main character Roy, the chair, his school desk, and the speech bubble. Now that I know which elements compose my panel, I decide which element ink first. In this case, I am already inking my character, because I usually start with that. I am inking from top to bottom. The first thing that I ink is the hair, then the face, the body, and I leave the legs at last. As you can see, I also divided my character into sections, so I can attack my work better and it won't feel overwhelmed with all the things I have to accomplish. Think of this process as how you can finish little objectives every time, and in the end, all of your work will be done faster. Another tip that I will give you is that you have to ink with long strokes on your drawing tablet. Don't do little strokes unless it is necessary on your drawing. With longer strokes, you can help your hand to be a lot more confident while inking. It will also help you have straighter lines instead of moved or blurry ones. It will take you a little bit of practice to make straight lines, but if you keep practicing and inking, you will dominate it in no time. If you still don't feel that confident, you can always make warm-up sketches and inking before you start inking your comic. Remember that the important thing here is for you to learn and practice as much as you need. Another great tip for your inking process is to play with the thickness of your lines. That's why we created and edited a new brush. What I normally do is to ink my outlines with a heavy pressure on my tablet, and then the interior lines are done with less pressure. This technique will help you notice better your design, and it will also be helpful to indicate which elements are more important than others on your panel. It will also help you give your panel more depth of field. The background or elements far away on your comic will be inked with a lot less pressure than the elements that are immediately in front of you. Experiment and practice this a lot. If you are having trouble with giving your lines different pressure, you can always change the size on your brush so it will give you automatically a thinner or thicker line. If you decide to do this, just remember the different sizes that now you are using on your comic, so everything will look the same from one panel to the other. Now that I've finished inking the head, I will start inking the body of my character. On our last lesson, I told you that we have to do our sketch with all the detail that it needs. Now, on my inking process, you can see why. I know where every detail is located and I won't miss anything from the sketch to the ink. For this process, I use the same tools that I explained on our last lesson besides the brush and the eraser. I use the lasso and marquee tool to select and edit in a specific area, but in the inking process, I don't use them that much. The rotation tool is the one that I use the most because I move the canvas in order to find the best way or direction to draw a difficult line. Sometimes I find myself using Ctrl-Z a lot. If this happens to you, try to ink some other part of your drawing, get another element done, and then go back to this part. Maybe you will get better after inking the rest of the drawing. And finally, one great tool to navigate around your canvas is the hand tool. Just click the letter H on your keyboard. This tool will let you move around your canvas easily and quickly. Just click and drag on the direction that you want to move. I am almost done inking the body of my character. I am going to continue with the legs. I am going to ink some details so it looks like he is wearing a pair of shorts. Remember to be patient with your inking skills. Sometimes we find ourselves with a lot of inking to do on one panel. Don't freak out, just pick the most important thing to start with and go from there. Maybe you are still not that experienced. Go with your own pace and speed. You have to feel comfortable and confident with your work first before developing speed. Sooner or later, you will be working faster, so be patient. Just to give some depth to my drawing, I decided to sketch the left hand. In this part, I am also inking so you can appreciate better the effect. It gives more volume to the whole panel. You can also give more depth on your panels using your background. Try inking it with a thinner brush, or maybe you can use a color gray to indicate less importance. Remember that if you add some new elements to your background, you should be consistent and do them on your next panels. You will have continuity on your comic. On your sketch, you draw the details of your panel. You have to ink everything you added from our last lesson. Don't worry if you miss them, you can always go back, but those details have to be there. One great tip for you is to every now and then turn off the inking layer and see how your sketch looks like. If you are not pleased with your inking, you can start over. Don't be afraid of that. The important thing is for you to be confident every time with your work. It doesn't matter how long it takes you, your inking and your speed will be constantly evolving, and you will get better with practice. I am done with the inking of my character, and now I am going to do the chair and the school desk. For this step, I will try to draw some straight lines for the legs of the chair and for the desk. I will draw them free-handed. I will not use the shift key to make perfect lines. The main thing why I don't use the shift key is because I like to practice doing long strokes free-handed so I can know how to draw them every time. But another important thing is that in the real world, inorganic things are not that perfect, so it doesn't matter if you do one line crooked, just try that your lines are not so twisted or dirty. Also, you have to remember how to use the Photoshop tools in order for you to work faster. Maybe you know now which of the tools help you the most. It all depends on how you get your inking done. For the chair and the desk, the main tool that I use the most is the rotation tool. I move my canvas quite a lot so I can get in a comfortable position. I will do long strokes with the inking brush so I can get my line in less tries. And then I just finish the details of my chair with some horizontal lines to indicate the back of it. Sometimes when you are trying to do long strokes, you can use Ctrl Z to do them over if you are not quite satisfied with the result. In this part I have some lines that went out of the limits of my panel. I will use the marquee tool to select them and erase them. You can also use your eraser. Now I can start inking Roy's desk, which is the last important element of the panel. But before inking the desk, I will add some detail on the chair. I will put some thinner lines inside to indicate the texture of my element. These details will give a lot more personality to my panel, and the elements will have a lot more importance to the viewer. The lines that I am adding to the chair will indicate a little bit of the material of which the chair is made of. The audience will know that the chair is made of wood. Maybe these little details will be missed by the person reading it, but it will give them the sense of the place in which all of the situation is happening. Now we can continue inking Roy's desk. As you can see, I am using the rotation tool to make those long lines that compose the desk. It will take a lot of tries to get the perfect line, but it's okay. You have to be patient in this step. If you think that it is taking a lot of tries for you, try inking another part of your drawing and then get back to those difficult lines. You will get there, don't worry. In the end, I finally got that line and I am just giving it some finishing touches. After having the general shape of the desk, I will continue inking the legs. On this part I will not have any big problems. I just have to make sure that I draw those lines perfectly, and it will help give some depth to the desk and in general to the whole panel. Again, I will be inking the middle line of the desk. It has the same process of the other lines and it took me quite a lot of tries. The only difference that this line has with the other ones is that it is a little bit thinner. I am giving a lot less pressure on my drawing tablet so it can look different. Try practice on another document the pressure that you give on your tablet. It is really important for you to master these tips so you will be able to draw the interior lines better. Finally, we are done inking the main elements of the first panel. And last but not least, I will ink the speech bubble for this part. For you to draw the best shape for your speech bubble, it is important that you find a comfortable position to ink it. Remember to use the rotation tool to achieve that. Another great tip for you is to divide your speech bubble by parts in your head and then ink those parts one by one. And finally, you just have to join all of your strokes. If you are a more experienced illustrator, you can do the whole shape in one quick stroke. It will depend on your abilities, but with practice you can master it. I am finishing here the last part of my speech bubble. I will continue inking the speech direction so I can have a complete shape. For the last part of the bubble, just remember which of your character is talking. In my panel, Roy is not talking yet, that's why I have the speech bubble pointed to the teacher. Before finishing inking your speech bubble, make sure that you don't leave any details that make your shape look off. Erase them or ink it all over again if you need to. Finally, I am done with inking my speech bubble. but as you can see, it is actually touching the right side of my panel. It looks a little bit of a mess. So I will do a quick fix for the speech bubble. With my lasso tool, I will select the bubble, and with my move tool, I will place it a little bit far to the left. And we are done with the inking process of the first panel. I hope it was helpful for you to see all my process and all the explanation so you can apply it. I will ink the next panels on a time-lapse video, and I will be explaining the things that I do different. If you need to go back on the video, feel free to do so. Remember to start inking by sections and work from there. I am inking my character first, then the chair, and finally the desk. I will also divide my character in sections and start inking from there. I will start with the hair, then the head and the face, the body and the legs at last. Once I finish with the character, I will ink the chair, the desk and the speech bubble. Organize your workflow with what works for you the best. Keep in mind your abilities and speed in order to get to your goals while inking. Be patient, and if you need to do it all over again, it's fine. The important thing is that you finish and you can have a very well done final product. Keep adding all the detail that your sketch has. It is important that your final sketch has all the important things in place. You will have a better inking process because you won't be thinking about how many details you have to add or if you miss anything. Your sketch will tell it for you. Also, another great tip is that you can change some shapes from the sketch to the inking process. You are constantly deciding whether a part of your sketch is well drawn or maybe you need to change it. All of the changes that you make have to be for the best of your drawing. In the end, you will have a very strong comic strip, so just keep working and have fun with your process. Try applying different pressures on your tablet in order to achieve different results. On the long run, your panels will have a lot of depth and a lot of interest. If you are not that experienced, you can change the size of your brush, but remember to use the same sizes always so your work will remain constant. Be confident with your work and your inking. Little by little, you will develop a better inking style and your drawing skills will improve. Now we have our 3 panels completed and it looks like a very strong comic strip. The only thing that we are missing are our dialogues. I recommend to you that you look for a font for your comic before putting your dialogues in, because a lot of fonts change sizes and some of them may not work for you. As you can see in front of you, I opened the file of my script on another window so I can see the dialogue and type it on the comic strip. In the image in front of you, I am using the type tool to create a text box. To access this tool, you just have to click the T key of your keyboard. Photoshop by default has a lot of fonts for you to use and experiment with what works best for you. For this comic strip, I downloaded one from the internet. You can use the font that you like, but make sure that the font you choose is the one that works perfectly for your comic strip. On my first panel, I wrote the dialogue and I am going to edit the text. The first thing that I am going to do is change the size so my audience can read it easily. Now I am going to change the color by selecting all the text, clicking the color box on the top and choosing the same color as my ink. While my text is still selected, I will modify the spacing between each sentence. Just click and hold your Alt key on the keyboard and click the up or down arrows depending on what you need. And finally, with my Move tool, I will put the text inside the middle of my speech bubble. As you can see, the text looks perfect on my speech bubble, but what happens if my speech bubble is too small? Well, let's take a look at the next panel. I duplicated the text box and I will use this one to make my next dialogue. As you can see, my next dialogue is a little bit longer than the first one. I will select all and start writing Roy's dialogue. Now you notice that my dialogue is a lot bigger than my speech bubble. If you find yourself in this problem, don't worry, it is very easy to fix it without deleting your dialogue. I will make the text box bigger so we can see the whole dialogue. It is also easier to edit if we can see all the letters. The first thing that I am going to do is to select all and change the size of the text. I will choose a smaller point size and I will also edit the spacing. Now, if I move it to the center of the speech bubble, you can see that the text box looks better, but the shape is still very small. Some letters are touching the borders. Now, we are going to edit the speech bubble. With my lasso tool, I will select it and duplicate it so I can separate it from the ink layer. Then I would delete the original speech bubble. Now I have the shape on a new layer. I suggest that you use the lasso tool in this part because it gives you more control on your selection. Now that we have the speech bubble on a new layer, I am going to right-click on top of that layer and choose the option Convert to Smart Object. As you can see now, I am rescaling without losing pixels or making the shape look bad. I am also moving it so I can leave it on a better position. And now I will put the text box inside my speech bubble. I think it fits a lot better now. This is a quick fix when you have this kind of problems. I will just make a little adjustment on the text spacing to make it look a little less jammed on the speech bubble. And finally, I will move it on the center of the shape. Again, on the new layer, right-click on it and then I will click the Rasterize Layer option. On the keyboard, you will hit Ctrl-E to merge it with the inking layer. Now, let's finish the third panel. I will take a quick look at my script to copy the dialogue that says, "You didn't do it, did you?" and "Worth the try." Now I will duplicate the last text box and use it to write the final dialogue of the teacher. Remember that you use Ctrl-J to duplicate a layer or a selected element. With the anchors of the text box, I am going to fix a little bit the sentences of the phrase. Just choose how it is easier for the audience to read. Once I edited the text, I will move it to the center of the shape, the same thing that I've been doing on our last panels. I am going to repeat the same steps for our last dialogue. Just remember to put your dialogues exactly as you wrote them on your script. This doesn't mean that you can't modify the dialogue. If you think that some other phrase is better, change it. Do experiments with what works better for your comic. The important thing is that the audience has to understand the joke or the idea that you want to communicate. The comic strip has to flow throughout the panels with the images and with the text. I am almost done with the dialogues of my third panel. I am just fixing the punchline with the anchors of the text box. This is the last phrase that Roy says. Remember to always put the text on the center of the speech bubble. You can also experiment with the position to give other types of emotions. And finally, we are done. I am just going to put all of the text layers on a group so I can have my document organized. Be sure that you don't lose any of the layers that we've been working on. I will rename the group and we finally completed our comic strip. This is the final part of our lesson. I hope this video was very helpful for you in order to achieve a better inking line and to put your dialogues in. I want you to practice your inking process on your own comic strip alongside with me. I want to see your own work and how it is now turning up. If you have any doubts or concerns, please let me know. I hope this lesson was helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you on our final lesson. Goodbye.